everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is TeacherFYI, where I share all my teacher tips and budget lifestyle. I'm Mackenzie and I teach 5th grade in Northern California, and I will be teaching virtually all year long. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing on the activity part of morning meeting, and I'm going to be sharing 15 games you can play online with your students to build community, connection, and just to start off the day on a fun note. So the first game is Beat the Clock, and for this game I assign each of my students a number at the beginning of the year that they had for the entire year. So if I have 24 students, then I number them 1 through 24, and we always play in the same order. The goal is to start from the very first person to the very last person, where they unmute the mic and simply count off. I add a timer to make it a little more competitive and see how fast they can go from the very first person to the very last person. And it is a simple count off 1, 2, 3, 4, so they get familiar with the order. I then switch it up throughout the year. They might be counting by 2s, by 5s, or simply sharing the name of the next person that goes after them. The goal is that we are trying to unmute our mics as quickly as possible to get from the very first person to the very last person, and I have learned any game that has a timer makes the students more motivated to play, they have more fun with it, and they are working together to beat their record as a whole class. So for these next few games, I do recommend that you teach your students how to make sure they are on grid view on Zoom so that they can see their entire class. So this next game is Would You Rather, and for this game I have my students make sure they're on grid view so that they can see what other students wanted the first option and which students prefer the second option. So to make it clear, I have my students, if they prefer the first option, they use one finger and touch their nose, and if they like the second option, they use both hands and touch their head. So would you rather fly or would you rather be invisible? Then they can easily see which students agree with them. So this next one is called The Wi-Fi Works for Everyone Who, and for this game everyone is in grid view, they turn their cameras off, and if the statement applies to them and is true, then they turn their camera on. So for example, the Wi-Fi works for everyone whose favorite color is blue, and then the students easily see everyone whose favorite color is blue. Then they all turn their cameras off and you say another statement. The Wi-Fi works for everyone whose favorite subject is science. And then they show their faces, and it's another great one to see what you have in common, and as the year goes on, I do let students lead this game. This next one made its way around TikTok, and that is Put a Finger Down, School Edition. So for this game, I have my students hold up 10 fingers, and I make sure that they can all be seen in the camera, and that way they can visually see the other students' fingers as they're putting their fingers down and see what they have in common and learn a little bit more about each other. So I might say, put a finger down if you have a pet. Put a finger down if your favorite subject is math. Put a finger down if you have traveled out of the country before. Put a finger down if you are the oldest in your family. And we keep going. I read 10 statements and they're able to learn a little bit more about their classmates. The fifth game is a virtual edition of the game Four Corners. Now, if we were playing this in the classroom, that is the game where my students choose one of the 4 corners in our classroom to go to, while one student has their eyes closed, calls out the corner, and then if those students happen to be in the corner that they called, they are all out and have to sit down. Now, the virtual edition of this game is having all my students on grid view. They hold up their fingers 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I choose one student using my flippity board, and that student becomes the Zoom Master. Now the Zoom Master cannot look as my students are holding up their fingers 1, 2, 3, or 4, and they have to call out one of those numbers. If you are holding up that number, then you are out and you have to turn your camera off. If the game goes on a little too long, I do change up the Zoom Masters throughout the game until we only have 1 or 2 students left and they are declared the winners. So the 6th game is Detective. Now to play this game, I have my students give a drum roll as I spin the wheel, and the wheel chooses the detective for the day. Now this detective cannot look, while the rest of the class then chooses a secret leader. This again is done by random, and the students have the choice whether or not they want to be the detective or the secret leader. Now the secret leader starts doing a motion that everyone else has to follow. So this is a game that needs to be on grid view so that everyone can see the secret leader, and they start doing the motion. I invite the detective back into the Zoom call, and the detective's job is to figure out who the secret leader is. So the secret leader needs to be doing motions and switch it up, and everyone needs to copy that secret leader. I do go over with my students that it needs to be obvious motions like clapping or touching their head that they can easily see in the grid view of our cameras. The detective has 3 chances to guess who the secret leader is, and my students always have a really fun time with this one. Activity 7 is Just Like Me. This is another great one to do at the beginning of the year. Each student takes a turn unmuting themselves, sharing one fact with the rest of the class. The rest of the students listen to that fact. If they agree and it applies to them, then they press one of the reaction buttons to show that that is just like them. This is good practice using those Zoom features, and they're learning a little bit more about each of their classmates. Activity 8 is great to practice those listening skills, and that is called Do As I Said and Not As I Say. So for this activity, I tell my students one action that I want them to do. They aren't to follow it until I give the second direction. So for example, I will say, everybody touch your nose. Everybody touch your head. Everybody touch your elbow. So they had to do the action that I said before I said the next direction. It's a little tricky, and the students always end up laughing when they're doing this because they start getting a little confused. Activity 9 is This or That. So I choose 2 different actions. I choose standing up or staying seated if they prefer this or that. So I make a list beforehand just so I can go a little quicker, and I might say, do you want pizza or do you want tacos? If they like this, which would be pizza, they stand up. If they want the second one, which would be tacos, they stay seated. It's also a good way for us to see each other visually while also getting a little bit of movement as we're sitting at our desks. Teaching upper grades, I recommend that you have your students share some that they want to do, typing them in the chat box, and then I usually share their examples so that they can also have some input about what they want to know about their classmates. Now this 10th activity is hands down one of my students' favorites, and that is a virtual scavenger hunt. Now it can be really simple and doesn't take a lot of planning. I have 3 rules that I go over with my students. The first is that they need to keep their device in one spot so that they're not running around their house holding their device. 2, they can ask for help from an adult if they need it. And 3, they only have 30 seconds to get the item and return and hold it up to the camera. To add another little twist, you could do a themed scavenger hunt. So for example, at the beginning of the year, I did an All About Me themed scavenger hunt so that we could learn a little bit more about each other. So every item I had them go get had to be something that taught us a little bit about them. Find something that starts with the first letter of your name. Find something that is your favorite color. Another theme could be rhyming, so find something that rhymes with the word bat. Find something that rhymes with the word up. Or a geometry theme, so finding different shapes around the house. Find something that is a triangle. Find something that is a rectangle. There's a lot of different themes you could do. Students always have so much fun with this one. When they bring their item back, I do have everyone hold their item up to the camera, and I call on a few students to share a little bit about each item. Activity 11 is secret code. Using the whiteboard feature in Zoom, I write out a secret code, and students have to take turns guessing the letter until they can figure out what the secret code is. And usually I have a daily quote every day, so sometimes I pull from past quotes to see if they remember them, or I might use a special saying or another vocabulary word to see if they can guess the word or the secret phrase. This next activity is the popular Pictionary. So this is really easy to do on Zoom because you can use the whiteboard feature, and I send the word to my students through the chat, and they are able to draw the picture while the rest of the class guesses. Game 13 is making words. Now for this one, I use a timer to make it a little more competitive. So I give my students a word or a phrase, and I show that by sharing my screen so that they can all see it, and then they have 1 minute to try to make as many words as they can from the letters of that word or phrase. When the timer is up, we see who got the most words during that time, and then we come together and share out all the words to see how many we came up with as a class. Activity 14 is a game you probably have already heard of before, and that is 20 questions. Now to play this game, either I can be the leader or I let another classmate if they volunteer, and we come up with one category. So that could be an object, an animal, or even one of our classmates once we know enough information about each other. And once they have it in their mind that they're thinking about, then the rest of the class needs to take turns asking yes or no questions. We usually do about 20 questions. If you have more than 20 students, you might want to adjust it so that everyone gets a chance to ask a question if they want to. And then they need to guess the object, animal, or classmate that they were thinking about. Activity 15 is Emoji Dance Party. Now, I saved this one for last because who doesn't want to end their morning with a dance party? So for this game, I put a different emoji on different slides and then put on music. And as I'm playing the music, I show the different emojis and students need to act out that emoji, and I end up going super fast by the end and they're all trying to copy it. We end up laughing and having a good time. So I hope that gives you some ideas of online games that you can play with your students. The activity portion of morning meeting is all about having fun with your students, making that connection, building that community with them. If you have any of your favorite morning meeting games, please share them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll catch you next time. Bye everyone.